what do we do if we want to create a more elaborate motif in Illustrator, right? Not just with text. I'm actually going to grab a picture to trace over, something like a floral. Or a flower. I don't want to copy other people's paintings, but I can grab my own picture of a flower. And I think we can just copy and paste it into Illustrator. There it is. Now I want to trace right over this image, but I don't want to be accidentally clicking and moving that image all the time, which, because Illustrator lets you work with everything on all one layer, you would be. And so I'm going to create a new layer. So over in my layers panel, I'm going to hit new. And remember, new, this like universal symbol, is like a square with a triangle in the corner. So create new layer, and then we get layer 2. And then layer 1, I'm going to double click on the layer, and you don't want to double click on, I guess this isn't as sensitive as Photoshop, but you generally want to double click where there's no text and also no like little image or any little symbol. So you double click in kind of this empty space. Photoshop really likes it when you double click in the empty space and not on the word and not on the picture. But this is Illustrator, so it's a little bit more forgiving. And we can actually just check right away. We can check template. And template locks the layer, which is another option over here. But it also dims the image to 50%. And if we hit OK, yeah, you can see it really lightened up that image, so we'll be able to see our lines on top of it really nicely. I maybe shouldn't have chosen one with a black background for this demonstration, but oh well. Sorry, plugging in. Okay. Now, the pen tool. So, first off, it's got a pencil sign and like a Ghostbuster symbol next to it right now, and that's because I'm on a locked layer. Okay, so it's not going to let me do anything to this layer because it's locked. So if this layer is selected over on the right, we can't edit it because it's locked. We could unlock it, but we want to be on layer 2. And we'll probably work on layer 2 for like the rest of this time, unless you like working on layers. And then with the pen tool, let me just explain how it works. So we talked about handles and anchors before, and the pen tool makes those handles and anchors as you go. So if you click and drag, it's making, can we see this up there? It's making a square, a white square. Where I click, that's where I clicked. And then where I drag, it's making a red circle and a line. This red circle and the line that connects it to the dot is not your pen mark. We're just making a handle, which is the center square. Nope. We're just making an anchor, which is the center square. I'm sorry. And a handle, which is the red circle. And those are going to tell our line how far to go. So if I drag this upwards, then it's going to come up when I release the pen line. So I'm going to release the pen line. And then this line, this curved line, where where my mouse is, where my pen shape is, that is a preview of your actual pen line. So if I want to make a wavy line, I'm going to draw up on one side, and then on my next side, I'm going to click here. And when I click, I'm going to place an anchor. So the line's always going to go through that anchor. And then I'm going to drag out the handles. And see, it's dragging out the handles for the back end too. So I'm affecting the line that I just clicked to place. Okay. And then if I wanted to make the same thing on the bottom, this time I'm going to click and drag up. Oh, I didn't give this any stroke, but we'll show it in a second. And this shape is made. So we made a little S shape. And let me give you a stroke. It has just a white fill. There we go. So this flower, it doesn't have too many, or this shape doesn't have any corners in it. So right now I feel like I have given you the skills. We're going to trace this flower. So I am going to click and drag somewhere around this petal, this particular petal. We're just tracing the petal. And you guys should watch and not try to follow along because this is confusing. Can you see the red on the pink? Okay. Oops. I hit escape and that ended my pen line. So you can change the color that those things display on. And I don't know what would show up better than that. Maybe nothing. I'll try yellow. Pen tool. It's tempting to put all the anchor points on like the center of the curve, but it's actually better for the pen tool to have anchor points kind of off to the sides of a curve. So let's say I want to make this curve that's on the right side of this petal. I'm going to click and drag at this point, and I'm moving. I want my pen tool to go to the right, so I'm clicking and dragging to the right. And I don't need this to go very far. Like if I dragged my handle way out here, the pen tool would make an exaggerated loop when I released. So I'm just going to drag it out a little bit. And we can always go back and edit these, and we'll get to that. So sometimes it's better just to get things close. So now I'm actually just going to come straight over here. It's tempting because it lines up right here to click right there, and that would be fine, but it's nice to make a really smooth line with like the least amount of anchor points possible. That's kind of the ideal. And so instead I'm going to click and drag here, and I'm going to drag to the left because that's the direction my line is going in, even though I like kind of want to adjust the side that's on the right still, but as I drag to the left, it's coming out to the right. And I can get it actually pretty close to the shape of the petal without going back in and adjusting, just by adjusting that line. And then I can come down here, and I might have to come in and adjust the that left handle, this handle eventually, because it seems like it's dragging it out a tiny bit too far. But I can place something here and feel pretty confident about that line. And then I can make a closed shape, right? Right now, if I hit enter to end my pen tool, otherwise you're just always in pen tool, you're always making a line until you hit enter or escape. Right now, if I hit enter, it would be an open shape. It wouldn't have a black line all the way around it. Maybe that doesn't matter, but maybe we want to work with closed shapes, which sometimes it's good practice to close all of your shapes if you can. And when I hover over this, it makes that circle. See the circle? So that's how we know it's going to close the shape, the circle next to it. Okay. And I didn't have to hit enter to close that because because I closed it. Or I didn't have to hit enter to end the pen tool because of that closing it. So now, let's say I want to go back in and get this shape a little bit more accurate. Remember we discussed the difference between the black selection tool and the white selection tool? Do you guys remember the difference? What's the difference, Julia?
One of them like is we're just moving and selecting, and then like the black one or the white one, I can't remember which one, but the one that's lower on the panel is moves to anchors.
Yes, so the white one, and if you hover over it, it's called the direct selection tool as opposed to just the selection tool. The white one allows us to move these anchor points and handles, right? And the black one, we would have to move this whole shape. We could scale and, oh, sorry, that button has never done that before. We could scale and adjust the size and stuff with the black selection tool, but we can't adjust those anchor points and handles. With the white selection tool, if I click on this anchor point, I can then click and drag on this left anchor point and just make it shorter. I don't really want to adjust like the direction it's going in too much because it was affecting the right side as well, but there it is. Okay. Now we could put a fill on that and it would be the start of our flower petal. Right? And if we wanted to, we could have a stroke on it and it would have like a black outline and it could get kind of illustrator-y, cartoonish. So that's how we do closed shapes with curved lines. Now we're going to do, first off, straight lines. You can make straight lines with the pen tool. So if I wanted to make just a zigzag with the pen tool, I would just click and not click and drag. Okay, so I'm not clicking and holding down the mouse button. I'm just clicking once. And then, of course, now this yellow is completely useless on the white. Clicking just once, and then clicking again, and then clicking again. And so we can make completely, perfectly straight lines this way. Now, what if we want to make curves that end up in corners? Okay, so that's different than this because these lines are perfectly flat, and we want to make curves that end up in corners. Like if we were tracing this petal, we could use Illustrator's stacking abilities and like just make a big shape behind that ends up behind these two other petals, but you end up needing corners sometimes, or this petal kind of ends in a sharp corner. So to do that, if we're clicking and dragging, and we're gonna drag out that arch shape again, except this time I want it to be more of a scalloped shape, right? So it's an arch, and then it's the same arch right next to it. It's not like an S. I'm gonna hold Alt, and Alt, see, it allows me to move this handle independent of the other handle. So this is what it's normally like without Alt. Oops. Boop-a-boo, wiggly on both sides. And then if I hold Alt, it instantly becomes a corner. And if I bring this back up, because I want the next line to also go back up, so I'm going to bring it up here, then the shape comes out that way again. And we can do that. It's filling right now with that black line. I don't know if that's confusing. I'm not drawing that line that's connecting it. It's so it's really just the black line that I draw that I'm kind of illustrating. So if we went in and we wanted to do maybe this petal, so there's a couple corners in this petal, we could, or maybe instead of tracing individual petals, we wanted to go outside the whole flower and just maybe we could draw the petal lines in after on top. You know, there's a bunch of different ways, the order of operations. So maybe we start from here, and I'm going to go along the top of this petal and then come to the second petal and make a corner, right? So we want the line to go somewhere out like that. And do you guys know what like a tangent is, right? So a tangent on a circle hits things directly on the side, and it's like almost like a 90-degree angle on a circle. I don't know, like on the edge of a circle. So generally I'm putting these things on a tangent to the curve that I'm making. So they're hitting the curve pretty evenly. And then I can either just click here, or I can click and drag outwards. And in this case, I might just click because there's already enough curve in the right, so I might not need handles to make this one the way that I want it. So that fit pretty well. But now I just have this straight line, but I can click and drag with it as a straight line and get a curve out of it. So you don't even need to hold Alt all of the time. Over here though, in this next corner, I would have to click and drag out, but then if I want it to turn upward, I'm gonna hit Alt and make this curve face up in that direction, that handle face up in that direction. And then I'd probably put another there and drag the handle out and then hold Alt. Okay, well, just a couple more things. And then I might, I'll look for that worksheet too. This is going to, like, if you're a first-time Illustrator user, you're probably going to get frustrated by the pen tool at first. But you can always hit Enter and then go back in with the direct selection tool, the white one, and adjust things to get them absolutely perfect. You know, you could get things a lot less close than I have even and still go back in and adjust things and be fine. But let's say I really wanted to get this arc into this shape, but I forgot to add an anchor point there, and I really want it to come back down. I can add anchor points with the pen tool. If we hover over a line, it's going to give you that plus on the side. See that? And that means it's the add anchor point tool. And so you can click on it and it adds an anchor point, and then you can adjust that anchor point the way that you want. And now we have that nice butt shape. You can also, now that I've gone back and adjusted this line, but maybe I want to continue it and I don't want it to be a whole second line, we start a line and the pen tool has a slash on it, okay? So that means it's going to continue the line from before. And we can click and drag that anchor point out just like that. Right, so that's the add anchor point tool and that slash mark to continue lines. There's also, so the add anchor point tool also lives underneath the pen tool, and there's also a delete anchor point tool that allows you to get rid of extra anchor points that you made. And still, so it still keeps the shape closed. Right, if we had a closed shape, so this star is a closed shape, it has a perfectly good fill when we put a fill on it. If we just grabbed the direct selection tool and chose an anchor point and then hit delete, it doesn't leave it a closed shape, right? It got rid of that line and now there's like a empty space there. It's not closed anymore. So instead of doing that, we can grab the minus anchor point tool or the delete anchor point tool, and if we click on it now, it weirdly made a duplicate. Oh, okay, it was kind of asking me if that's what I wanted to do. That was weird. But see, now it made a closed, shape. Okay, one more thing about the pen tool, and then I'm going to let you guys ask questions about the pen tool. If we want to, if we're making a bunch of straight lines, I'll do it on the black again. If we're making a straight line, and then we want this next part to be like a perfectly even arc, we can drag out just one handle on this anchor. So if I, instead of moving on to my next point and trying to make a shape like that, and by the way, you can hit Control Z to step backwards in your pen tool adventures. Instead of doing that, which would just be lopsided, we can click and drag on this anchor point, drag out a handle, and then over here we can have a perfectly even handle. Same thing if we were making a curve. Yeah, if we were making a curve, I'll do it here. And then let's say we wanted to make a straight line, right? But we can't right now because there's a handle here. You can either, oh yeah, you just click on this handle, on this anchor point, and your second handle is going to disappear. So if I click, it turns into a no or a single handled point, and then you can just click and drag the rest of the line out as you wish. Questions on the pen tool? Okay. So I'm going to stop the recording there. That's the pen tool recording. And then we're going to talk about colorizing and making